we need to become comfortable in having the mind become tranquil. So being comfortable with an unagitated mind is extremely important. This is something we don't hear normally. But in this age of modernity, the mind of a human being has grown unaccustomed, unused to experiencing peace and tranquility, let alone deep levels of tranquility that meditation takes us to. So, becoming comfortable with the tranquility in the mind is a big part of the practice. This path encourages us to answer the call to adventure by taking up the challenge of going beyond what is considered comfortable for the mind in its default state, what it's used to basically, what comes naturally, which in fact is a lie that the mind keeps telling us. And the habitual tendencies that keep convincing us in order to keep us in this very smelly, very stinky swampland, this mire of ignorance, as we perpetually do more of the same old, same old. This is another name for distortions in the mind, which the Buddha called Vipallāsa, whereby we have the tendency to avoid taking a step that might make us experience some level of discomfort. Basically, what the habitual tendencies keep telling us that they're not happy with this state of discomfort. In fact, even the promise or the reward, which, if that step is taken, can be 1,000 times better than that status quo, still for the mind, in its default state, the status quo is a lot more attractive. So these distortions in our perception, in our thinking, in our behavior, in the body, in our views, in our wrong views, are responsible for continually keeping us for ways to remain in suffering. I recall from the suttas how Venerable Sariputta and Venerable Mahamoggallana, before they were bhikkhus, they were studying under another teacher. His name was Sanjaya. After they attained the first stage from just hearing one or two lines of what Venerable Assaji told them, or told Venerable Sariputta, just by hearing they attained the first stage. So they go rushing back to their teacher at that time, and they say they have found the one, they have found the teacher, they have found the Buddha. And the three of them must go and learn and be students under the Buddha, because he has the key. And guess what Sanjaya says? He says, it's not for me, you guys go ahead. He wanted more of the same old, same old. He was comfortable in the status quo of his ignorance, in the few students that he was left with, because everyone else took off with Venerable Sariputta and Mahamoggallana. So this remaining in the status quo is quite very dangerous. Often we mention in teachings the Dhamma how the second noble truth is that of craving, right? And seeing how it makes us jump from one thing to the next, from one toy to the next, from like a monkey jumping from one tree branch to another. But many seem to ignore the fact that this choosing to remain ignorant and therefore seek the next experience, whatever it may be, is because the mind cannot see itself worthy for anything better, neither capable of experiencing something better, nor, in many cases, deserving of the freedom from suffering. The mind does not see itself worthy of the deep layers, deep levels of tranquility, and especially when it comes to Nibbana. We keep talking about it, romanticizing about it, imagining this and that, but when it gets to that level of things coming apart, when the habitual tendencies are discovered, are exposed for what they are, when ignorance is in plain sight, many scurry back to whatever is very comfortable to them. The mire, the stinky mire, the stinky swamp land that the mind has been used to. In my experience, I've seen this again and again, how it feels much more natural to be in an agitated state, the mind, that is, to stay in that agitation, to consider that even normal. In essence, it's the path of least resistance, which is magic for the mind. It's music to its ears. Now, of course, the world is like an ocean, which, with its unending distractions and buckets of mesmerizing, washable paint, which is a term that I like to use for the six sense spaces. The paint that is very washable because it's temporary, whatever the six senses are offering us. The world is a massive resource supplying us with a continued stream of things to run after, basically keeping us in this unending cycle of delusion, as it has for countless eons, and it will continue to do so, unless we put an end to it. The Buddha put an end to it. And he has, and he is showing us, teaching us how to do it too. To put an end to this whole mass of suffering, this whole nonsense. Even if the mind is suppressed in these habitual tendencies, if with the help of our tremendous energy, perseverance, virtuous behavior, effort, proper teachings. Even if it becomes calmer and calmer, we still have to muster up the courage to face the worst enemy of all, head on, which again happens to be the habitual tendencies, the negative habitual tendencies, patterns of the inner workings of the mind. If you want to meet your worst enemy, that's it. There's no one outside of you deserving of the title worst enemy. The mind is. But it can also turn into your best friend, because if we see ourselves deserving of the tranquility, of calmness, of the freedom of nibbana, then it's only going to happen when we become friends with the mind. When we understand that these are like, think of them as weak points, weak spots in the body. If you're trying to train the body, if you're trying to get the body to be healthy after an injury or whatever, you need to retrain the body, re-educate certain muscles. Instead of saying, well, this is it, and be bedridden for the rest of your life, which is not going to take long. Unless you challenge those and you pierce through. This is the reason why good teachers of the Dhamma always seek to inspire, encourage, hearten, and uplift the minds and hearts of their students to push through this sense of inertia of what is common to the mind, what is normal. Basically, what the mind has been used to since time immemorial. To take that leap of faith into the unknown every single time you sit, or every single time you find yourself on that, crossroads of like, should I keep this precept, or should I just, it's okay, no one's watching. Every time you feel or see someone who needs something that you have, a possession, a little bit of money you have, a food, a bottle of water, that they need it more than you. That's a leap of faith. That's taking up the challenge of the uncomfortable. That's pushing the boundaries of opening these rusty gates and allow new possibilities of experience to happen. And similarly, when we are allowing the mind to become more comfortable with tranquility, with calmness, that's what we're doing. There's a lot of trust there, and there's a lot of, you know what, I think I do deserve an unagitated mind. A mind that is calm. Now, not in 20, 30, 40 years. So what I'm sharing here with you is, can you allow this change in your attitude towards yourself? Can you allow this change to occur towards yourself, to break the pattern that has kept and continues to keep us, sentient beings, in this cruel tentacles of death and rebirth, and everything nasty that comes along with it? This means that in addition to the three trainings, which are the sila, virtuous behavior, virtuous life, samadhi, which is mental cultivation, and panya, which is wisdom and discernment, in addition to these three, we must see and allow ourselves the possibility of deserving of liberation, of nibbana, to stop adding more countless piles of corpses, just of our own, by the way, on the face of the earth, and to come out of our shackles of habituated ignorance that we alone are responsible for. No one else is. The Buddha said, your only inheritance is your karma, what you've done, good or bad. That's the only thing that you have as your inheritance. But seeking the path of freedom is acknowledging all that, but at the same time saying, okay, can I put an end to this? And no one else has the ability to. The Buddha could not give awakening to anyone. In that sense, the Buddha did not save anybody. Anyone who can say that or is saying that is delusional. There's no such place in the Dhamma for such ideas. No one can give liberation or cause liberation in that sense to anybody. It's our responsibility to bring about a life, to live a life, in fact, that says, okay, enough of this. Enough of doing this same old, same old. Why don't I just go ahead and put an end to my suffering? And the very first thing that comes to mind is a mind that is unagitated, unperturbed. The term that the Buddha used is akuppa ceto vimutti. Akuppa ceto vimutti. Ceto is the mind, the heart, think of it. Akuppa is unperturbed, unshakable. Vimutti is liberation. Nothing can shake it. Nothing. No one can take it away from you. Not even the Buddha. He can't give it, he can't take it away. But as a great teacher as he was, he showed us the way. He's still showing it to us for 2,600 years. But we are too mesmerized by the same old, same old. What the mind feels comfortable doing. Lazy. Let's stop that. Because it's just a doorway for more suffering. So, can we allow ourselves the possibility of nibbana, the possibility of having that unperturbed state of awakening? Now, it's a lofty goal, of course, yes. But we start by baby steps, right? When you're going into meditation, oftentimes when you hit that benchmark or that level where things are just quiet, even so briefly, the mind starts shaking like this. And it's like, oh, what is this? What is this? And all of a sudden it's like, it's gone. Oh, and then you go ahead, cross your fingers and try to create the same situations or conditions to make it happen again, causing more agitation. So you're fighting against yourself. This is not about fighting. This is about allowing yourself to go deeper. So those are some of the thoughts I wanted to share at this moment. And today we will end a little bit early because well, there's for certain technicalities, and um, so I just wanted to make sure we have enough time. I didn't want to take any time from questions that I possibly might have some answers for or whatever. So, any comments, questions, thoughts, critiques about the practice, where you're at, how this sounded, etc. Yes.
I just want to give a response, not so much a question. One of my initial resistance to Buddhism was the idea of karma, because I just feel, hey, you know, why should my parents or my grandparents, what they did, why should it, you know, be I'm taking the consequence? And what you said today actually makes a lot of sense, because you said no matter what karma, it is our only inheritance, but nevertheless it's also up to you to liberate yourself, to awaken. So it's not like, oh, you can do anything because you inherit this. So I want to thank you for
that. Yes, just clarification on the parents' karma. It's actually your karma. The parents have nothing to do with it. So it's it's an ignorance from our part, because I used to look at my parents and the culture or the society or the part of the world that I was born into, and I would obviously point the finger away from me. They were the causes for my suffering. So it behooves upon me to carry that extra load that I didn't deserve, that I've been given. That's just, as far as the Dhamma is concerned, that's just nonsense. When the Buddha says your only inheritance is your kamma, it's not your inheritance as like something you would get from parents or grandparents. No. It's your own actions, the causes that have been created in your past lives. You have chosen. Even you don't even have to go to the past life, even from today. If it's cold outside and you don't wear appropriate clothing and you step into a snowstorm, you just created the causes and conditions for what will ensue at the end of the day if you survive the snowstorm. So the causes, conditions were created by us for us now to pick up the pieces, and we will pick up the pieces. It's like carrying a suitcase, checking it in at the airport with your name and everything on it, with your passport information, your flight, and you land at your destination. Guess what greets you there? Your bags with your name on it. No one else, it's yours. Think of it like that. That is your kamma, which you inherited by the choices that was made thanks to you. So your parents don't have much choice in this, because they're dealing with their own situations. Now, collectively, yes, sometimes the kamma will resonate with each other. So we look for similar kammic residual factors, and the consciousness just drops into that world, into that milieu. And then we say, okay. But that takes us into metaphysical or esoteric aspects of which I'm not interested that much. I look at what's in front of us. So I hope that kind of shed some light on the kamma bit. You had a question. I don't want to. Well, upatissa. Can you unmute? We can't hear you. Oh. No, we can't hear. Can you pull the plug out? Maybe that's why. No, I can't. We can't hear you. Can you restart?
Upatissa, maybe on your computer, you need to allow the audio to function with the earphones.
Oh.
Because I noticed you changed the earphones.
Oh yeah, you had the earbuds and then now you have something with a cord. Or you can just restart it quickly. Okay, that's what he did. Meanwhile, as he's come back on, any other thoughts, questions?
I had a question.
Yes.
If you don't mind. It's primarily regarding mental health. I noticed the precinct mentions, not consuming anything that alters the brain, but what's the Buddhist thinking on, antidepressants or any other medication?
Medication is, the Buddha was very clear on the 5 precepts for a layperson. The 5th one, anything that intoxicates the mind. But at the same time, he was also a realist. He was a humanist in the sense that if the individual needed to relieve physical pain, actual pain, of course, medication needs to be taken. Now, it's the indulgence in. Now, the person may no longer need the medication. They've recovered. They don't need morphine. But guess what? Part of the brain says, not with everyone, of course, but an individual, let's say, would say, oh, I like the nice buzz that I get. Okay, now you've left the territory of, let me ameliorate my physical, my pain, my situation, and relieve it. And we've gone into, I want to indulge in this feel-good sensation, which is basically dullness of the mind. You're creating an intoxicated state of mind, which definitely shuts the iron gates of ignorance on wisdom from ever occurring. So it's simply for protection. The 5 precepts, all of them, they're there for our protection to get us to experience liberation, freedom from pain, suffering. I hope that kind of...
That cleared it up perfectly.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Yes, Upatissa, now try.
Can you hear me?
Yes, kind of broken, but we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I guess ironically, it's being able to see dukkha and seeing dukkha for what it is that is the approximate cause for us to want to get out of the the usual situation that we are in to pursue something that is like nibbana, isn't it?
Yes, and if you allow me, it's to kind of extend that a little bit. You see it also in, not necessarily in the mind, in the territory of just getting the mind becoming accustomed to a new habit. Like in the field of psychology, there's something like positive psychology, for example. There, to create a new habit. For example, someone who has a negative or bad habit, toxic habit, the therapist might go ahead and encourage them to start running or play tennis or try meditation. But you have to have this threshold that you cross over. Same thing when I used to be a fitness trainer years ago, I would have to encourage the client to push through the first few weeks, at least a week and a half, by coming in 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, let's say. And as they cross over this very crucial threshold where they no longer have the DOMS, which is delayed onset of muscle soreness, we call it, fancy word for the muscles hurting, the joints hurting, especially the muscles. Now, a lot of people quit before reaching that threshold. But once they cross it and they have a few more weeks under their belt, guess what happens? You do not have to call them to come to the gym to work out. They now feel compelled to run, to play the tennis, or to sit, or to just, to go in and lift the weights, because they just feel great. Now, with the mind, I don't see much of a difference. But because the work that we're doing, the return on it is so much greater than any muscle or body fitness is ever going to give us, because those are temporary. The liberation that we're talking about is unconditioned. That's why Nibbana is an unconditioned element, according to the Dhamma, the teachings. So, but there is that threshold that needs to be crossed. And even like when the body is facing a difficulty, even using the example of fitness, when a person is not able to do 5 push-ups and they are getting close to it and they say, no, I quit. What the body is also trying to do is it's trying to preserve ATP, which is a fancy molecule that because of it, we have energy in our muscles. It's adenosine triphosphate, which is in the mitochondria, if you want to be technical. They're like the batteries that give the muscles energy to perform and to push and to push. And as they tear the muscle fibers, that's how the muscle grows. And now they have an endurance to push and be able to do 10 push-ups. So I haven't seen any research that could demonstrate that there is a similar role player like ATP within the context of the mind. But I would like to call it the ignorance factor quotient, and in contrast to the wisdom quotient. But these, it's not easy attaining Nibbana. And it needs work. But as you're putting the work, everything else is changing. The person using a mediocre, superficial image that I just used of the person doing push-ups, for example, it's not the fact that they're now able to do 50 push-ups, but they are now able to stand in front of the mirror and not be able to identify who they're looking at because the body's changed. They're eating healthy, their diabetes is shifting. In some cases, type 2 completely disappears. Also, you go ahead and check your medical doctor. I have to put that. But I've seen it happen. I have seen it happen. So all these other factors are affected by simply having the person push through these physical resistances to getting healthy. And when it comes to the mind, all of a sudden, the person is able to accomplish a lot more under a lot more strain and with a clear head, with a clear conscience, with no remorse whatsoever. People start to like that person instead of running away from them. They wake up and sleep happy. They become pleasant to be around, not just for humans. So that's what I would like to offer. Yes, but that was a brilliant point as far as the dukkha element is concerned. Any other thoughts?
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Yes? Oh, I thought someone had a hand. We still have about 20 minutes, so. There needs to be that allowing. For some reason, we carry on this sense of guilt, this sense of, and I've seen it across cultures. I used to think it's mostly predominant in Western cultures, but I have to say I've seen it in other cultures as well. secretly, only to our, we are only privy to this ourselves, but there is the sense of, no, I'm not qualified for this. I'm not good enough for this. Maybe it's in our DNA. I don't know. But it's a wonderful thing when we see ourselves deserving of even a little bit of liberation, a mini nibbana. When we choose to stop from doing whatever it is that we're accustomed to do, which inevitably leads us to a remorseful state, and instead choosing something, you know what, I'm going to try something else. A different form, a different response to this situation. That's why the Dhammic path is non-reactionary. It's a lifestyle of responding. And as many of you know, reaction and response, one is immediate. The other one is you pause, you take it in, you process it. And you come from a place of stillness and quietude with a clearer mind. And even your complexion shows this. Your body language shows this. As a teacher, high school teacher, I used to notice this around my students. When they used to get agitated and their facial expressions would change when they would see me agitated. And I would pause and I would ask what happened, and they say, we don't like what we're seeing. Or, what's going on, sir? In those days, they used to call us sir. And I say, what do you mean? Meanwhile, my blood pressure is dropping back down again. For whatever reason, I would have been, let's say, jittery, agitated, you name it, and trying to control 40 plus students, teenagers, raging hormones and all that, while teaching a subject like science. But that moment, that caused them to stop. It registered differently, and then they were compassionate enough to return to me and say, what's happening? So that can cause a person to dip in to the quality of mind and seeing how that is affecting the world around them. So that would be another example. What do you guys think? Any thoughts, questions? Yes, yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Oh, hi. Thank you. It's not about exactly what you were talking about, but I had a question about, because I have some colleagues and friends who are Buddhists, and therefore some are from Sri Lanka, some are from Burma,
Yes.
some are from Thailand, and they always talk about things. I don't know too much, that's why I was curious, because of your travels in India,
Mm-hmm.
other places. Buddhists and Muslims, because some Sri Lankans I talk to, they're all, they say they're afraid of, Sri Lanka becoming overrun by Muslims and stuff. And then, Aung San Suu Kyi, I think she's a Buddhist, but then she's criticized for not maybe having a certain amount of empathy or things around the Rohingya who are Muslim. And so I'm a little bit, I think I'm a Buddhist or a wannabe Buddhist. And so the thing is, of course, I try to side with my friends who are Buddhists about, but then I feel I'm kind of ignorant about Muslims. And, a lot of times Buddhists and Muslims have lived in close proximity, in history. So I was just curious what, from your observations in different countries or from people, you know, what kind of stance, or should we take a stance at all? Or should we just say, well, it's your karma, not mine? I just don't, it's the reason why I'm asking is not because I'm asking not in a political sense, but in a sense of, you know, because the world has many, you know, Christians I could handle a little better, but the Buddhists and Muslims, it's very hard for me to get a handle on, actually. I just can't.
Yes.
So I was just curious what your observations might be.
In our culture, that is so phrase I'm coming up with that comes up with in my mind is like bruises so easily. Political correctness has gone off the rails, and we are digesting what is offered to us by the media, which basically are the hands or the arms of much, much bigger organizations. When you look at them, their roots, you see that they are actually part of the bigger family of companies, corporations. So they have allegiances, not to the news, even though they call themselves the news, but they have allegiances elsewhere in offering us whatever is being dictated versus what a human being on the ground might experience. Let's say in India, this is an area that it's like a hornet's nest. Unfortunately, it shouldn't be like that, I think, because forget about the element of Buddhist or not Buddhist, Muslim or Hindu or Christian, or you calling yourself a Buddhist or being confused about whether you should call yourself a Buddhist or not. I feel much more comfortable by calling myself a humanist, a human. How about that? Let's go with that. And I deserve, like you, like the other human being on the other side of the planet, to be treated with some dignity and respect. I was stunned a few times while I was traveling it was in Jaipur, in fact. And I was getting hungry, and I was in this small cab, and the cab was taking me around these different palaces, things. And I was hungry, and the person said, why don't I pull you into these tiny little hole in the wall type of a restaurant? And if you're in India, you don't do that if you're a Westerner. So the advice that I was given was eat fruits that you can peel off the skin. And so I saw this vendor who was selling bananas. This, what I assume was a teenager. So I asked him to stop in the car. So I get out and I go in. I see this person, and I like to buy like a dozen bananas for myself and the driver. And the person goes ahead and asks me, are you a Muslim? I said, no, I'm not. Are you a Christian? And I said, no, I'm not. And he goes and he gestures that he's going to slit my throat. He was no more than 14 years old, a child. So I was stunned, like that stayed with me. And this was about, 3 years ago. And like what has happened to this child? What has been his indoctrination like? Now, this is the image that you do not see about Muslims and the world when you are talking. I have Muslim friends who, human beings, par excellence, they're so kind and generous and kind and loving people. Unfortunately, we have to look under the surface when we're talking about the whole globe, and there's a lot of political, unfortunately, socioeconomic and political movements happening, which are, in my opinion, because you're asking for my opinion, and this is my opinion based on my experiences only, is that there's a lot more to be said when we're dealing with the actual people beyond what you see on CNN or what you see on social media, what they want us to believe. I've never been exposed to racism in Italy. I'm in Italy. After I finish my quarantine, I go outside and I'm walking to buy, with someone from the temple helping me and buy some groceries. And someone behind me says a few words in Arabic. I speak and understand and read and write Arabic fluently. Now I paused. Well, he sees me, and it wasn't a child, it was someone who was like 17, 18 years old, and a man was next to him, and the man said something like, may God save us from these beings, looking at me. Now in Arabic, it's something that you would say only for like Satan, okay? I've never heard it being said to another human being. And then the man just said it 3 times. So I was obviously ignoring as I was passing by. And then this younger fella, the 17, 18-year-old, turned to me and spat in my direction. He spit at me, basically. And at that point, I had to stop. I turned around and I said, "What did you do?" In Arabic. In Arabic that he understands. First of all, he was not expecting a white person, a bald person, a Buddhist monk to turn to him and speak in Arabic. At first, he did a double take because it was like, is he really hearing me speak? The man, meanwhile, turned his face and he pretended that he wasn't saying anything. He never did that. And I told this younger man he should be ashamed of himself for doing that. And he looked away too. Now, I've never been exposed to racism or in any form of like prejudice in my travels in Europe. Well, these are refugees that Europe has opened its doors to. If a government official comes and asks them for papers, for IDs, guess what? They're illegal here only out of the kindness of the Western culture. Now, how many times do people actually hear about some incident like this? I've never heard anything like this on the media. So these are big questions for me I have no answer for. So I'm trying to answer your question with another question based on real life, based on me. It's not hearsay. This happened to me twice. So we need to, in the West especially, all of us who are in this, let's integrate, let's accept, let's do this, let's do that, we have to look carefully at the data. In Bangladesh, almost every week there's a Buddhist monk being killed, pulled out from a temple that was destroyed by, unfortunately, the ignorant classes of the community, which happens to be in the majority of Muslims. Now, is it Islam doing that? I don't believe so. Islam actually comes from the root word sulm. Sulm is the root word for peace. So Islam is peace in its name, at least. But these ignorant characters are doing that. But we don't hear about them in the Western media, of the hundreds of monks who die, are massacred in Bangladesh and other places. So is there a bias going on on a massive scale? I think so, unfortunately. At least they're not being given the light that they deserve of being exposed to, okay, what's happening in the world? Are we being fair in our coverage of the news? So this kind of went into political, I guess, or geo-social arena. I hope that answered your question somehow, though.
I think it actually opens up a can of worms. It's actually good material for another book, sort of travels of a contemporary monk, but tied in with things like gender, racism,
Yeah, yeah.
all that kind of thing. Because people actually, I think, it's like stories like you read in the, in the Dhamma part of it. Yeah, I mean, these are stories which are happening. Just, whether it's to you, but they become allegories, and they actually raise people's thinking. Just a follow-up question on that. So, if a lot of Buddhist monks are killed by Muslims, is it the karma of these Buddhist monks that they did something bad or something to deserve this kind of violence?
We have to be careful about just giving a very easy, simple, like one-size-fits-all answer to things, especially when we're dealing with Buddhist teachings. If you've heard me speak at all on the Dhamma, you know that to be the case. So yes, karma is part of it. Yes, but there's other conditional factors, including people's choices. That's huge. The Buddha used the word, the verb cetana. Cetana is it's like volitional, directive, decision-making ability that humans have. How much we use it, that's a different story. So cetana is crucial. Let's say if a person goes outside by accident, you step on an animal and dies, the animal dies. Is there a karmic residue to that? Well, the Buddha would never ask that question. It would just go straight to the intentional part. Was the intention to kill there in the person? If it's not, then it's hardly any karmic residue from that impact. And that would make it the karma of the being that was killed. But when you're talking about human beings residing in a certain area, Bangladeshi people, by the way, they're not like Buddhists from another country who moved to Bangladesh, but that's their religion for such a long time, and they serve communities and they help people. So that's their probably only language they speak too. So possibly might be their karma, something to do with that, but it's not all just karma.
Thank you.
We have only a couple of minutes left for us to, I think we can take one more question or comment. The reason why I wanted to share some of my experiences is because when it came to that question on racism and Islam and all that, these are things that I have not heard other Buddhist teachers speak about in public. But these are things that are happening in the world today, in private and in public, but no one wants to talk about it. And that's the reason why I feel the need for me to speak about this. And I didn't decline from answering your question for that reason.
No, thanks. I know it was one of those questions that put people on the spot.
Yeah. All right. So in that case, why don't we share some merits? May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share in these merits that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power, share in these merits. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu. Be well, stay safe, keep smiling, and keep allowing yourselves to experience deeper layers of tranquility. Allowing yourselves. Seeing that as a possibility for you. Instead of the same old, same old, same old. You've done that enough times, enough craziness. put an end to it. That was the Buddha's advice. And no one's going to put an end to it other than ourselves. So have an amazing week, safe one. And I'll see you, see you next time. Be well.
Thank you, Bhante.
Very good.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.